Hi, my name is Nzinga Oniwo-san. Welcome to Nourish. My company's name is Yes Baby, I Like It Raw. And today we're going to talk a bit about food. And I'm also going to share this awesome recipe with you that you'll hopefully make in the next coming days or even today. So before we deep dive into this recipe, I wanted to answer a few questions with respect to the quality of the food you eat and whether or not you should buy organic. I always want to think of it like this. You are a living thing, and so you want to ingest things that are going to allow your body to thrive, to heal, and replenish itself. Our body does everything. At the end of the day, it's not the healer that heals the body. It's the body that heals the body. And either we're supporting the healing mechanisms that it already has in place, or we're working against it. So our foods essentially end up being our first medicine. And so either you're feeding yourself life or you're feeding yourself death. And so essentially one of the primary recommendations I make is that 50% of your day, if possible, is raw. So that could look like a green smoothie in the morning, a salad with every meal, and then you've probably hit a right balance of terms of living foods as well as processed foods or cooked foods. And so when I say this, there's a question that always will show up, well, what about organic? If you can buy everything organic, do so. We know that our foods are laden with chemicals and antibiotics and steroids, particularly a lot of the meats that we're eating. But if you can't afford to eat organic, your best thing to do is to use the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. There's this organization called Environmental Workers Group, and basically in this list that they created called the Dirty Dozens and the Clean 15, they tell you about 12 things that are most toxic that you should always unapologetically buy organic. And then they have 15 things that you don't necessarily have to buy organic. So that's why it's called the Clean 15. Buy local is also really important. If these foods and fruits and vegetables and meats that you are buying are coming from a long distance, usually, especially if they're importing them into the country, they're getting sprayed, they're having chemicals. They might have been grown organically, but in order to come into the country, they're being sprayed with different chemicals to meet the rules that we have in America in terms of regulation. So buy local, buy organic when you can, but always buy things in the Dirty Dozen. Again, the Dirty Dozen are fruits and vegetables that are super toxic and things like that. And so when I say toxic, let me break that down a little bit. A lot of these foods have chemicals in them that will affect your hormones. They will affect your nervous system. They can sometimes even be carcinogenic. So that means that they can promote cancer in the body. So we just want to make sure that we're putting things in our body that promotes health. So again, think of it like this. Your food is your first medicine. So when you assess what you're eating on a daily basis, are you feeding your body life, or are you feeding your body things that don't let it thrive optimally? Next question on my list is, what's the best place? I threw it out there, try to buy things local. What's the best place to buy things seasonally? Check out your local farmers market. They have usually fruits and vegetables in season. It's not things that are imported. And usually another thing that you can look at if you're looking at your local grocery store is going to see what they have in influx. It's usually the stuff that is on sale. So like, for instance, right now, it is a season for plums and peaches and things like that. So that's an influx. And it really just depends on where you are in the world. But again, a great place to find your seasonal fruits and vegetables is at a local farmer's market, or even asking at your local grocery store, or even planting some things. You know, one of the things I've been encouraging people to do is start to plant some of the foods that they purchase on a regular basis. It's a lot easier than you think. A lot of the things that we purchase and throw away in terms of food waste are great garden starters. We're talking about your romaine lettuce, your carrots, your beets, even, you know, your cabbage, your green onions are things that you can just soak in some water, and before you know, its roots are starting to grow and sprout, and then you can put it into a pot or even put it outside if you have access to that. So last question before I get into this meal that we're making today is, what are the best oils to use? So this is a complicated question to answer. My first suggestion is that we need to minimize the oils that we're using. A lot of the research is showing that the oils that we are consuming, be it cooked or not cooked, are in excess, are cancer promoters. They're leading to things like diabetes. So I would say there should be a reduction in oil that you're using. But then if you are using oil to cook, there are very specific oils that you should use. So for instance, if you're going to be frying things, the oils that I would suggest using is like your avocado oil and your coconut oil. Now, when you're making dressings, that's where your olive oil comes in really well. Unfortunately, a lot of times we're using olive oil to cook our foods, but it denatures, it breaks down when we apply heat to it, and then it ends up being less effective in terms of promoting health in our body. Okay, so let's get down to it. What are we cooking today? Today, we are going to make a taco salad. I have a variety of ingredients here that we're going to use to make this taco salad. So we're going to have a combination of two sets of greens. Our mixed greens here, which is a variety of different greens. So you have like your baby Swiss chard, your romaine, your arugula, and things of that nature are mixed in. You typically in your spring mix, even you will find like things like spinach in here. I'm also using kale. So kale is really great source of iron and also vitamin K, which is really important for us healing in terms of cuts. And then it's both of these greens are really good for your iron. And one of the things that I love about this particular recipe is I've added a dose of vitamin C in there. So probably looking at my table right now, like, where's the vitamin C coming from? Our red peppers. And I'm going to show you how we're going to use it. And I have it in two different places in this dish. Red peppers are super high in vitamin C. They're actually higher than in orange. So in the presence of vitamin C, iron is absorbed upwards of 30%. So if you know that you're suffering from anemia and you want to increase your iron absorption and be a little bit more effective, having some vitamin C with your greens is a great way to do it. So that's as simple as adding some sweet bell peppers in there, or even adding some oranges in there. I have an awesome recipe that I add oranges, but not doing that today. So a lot of times when I say kale, I get a frown. And everybody gets bitter. If you want to fall in love with kale, massaging kale is super, super critical. So in this case, you can massage it with a little oil. You can massage it with a little salt. And what you essentially want to do is massage it until your kale looks a lot darker and it won't be so tough to consume. So I'm just going to add a little salt here. Again, you can just add a little oil as well. And I'm just going to break it down like so. So the time for massaging your kale is, you'll see the color of your kale darken, and then you know you're doing pretty good. So I'm going to work this. So massage it down. And if you notice, there's been a significant reduction in size with me massaging it. So as you can see, my kale is actually getting a lot darker in color. And so this actually makes it easier for you to digest and make some of the nutrients a little bit more available, because if you can digest it better, then that means you can get all the good vitamins and minerals that are present in the leafy green. So this is, I feel like my kale is in a great place. If you notice, I've almost reduced it down to 50%. So I'm gonna wash my hands really quick and come right back. Okay, so in terms of dressing, what we're going to do here is we're going to make my famous nacho cheese sauce. So for your nacho cheese, this is a plant-based vegan meal. We're not using our standard cheese that came from the dairy field. We're actually going to use cashews to make this recipe. The beautiful thing about cashews is this: it works great on the savory end of things. So in this case, for the nacho cheese, it's nice and creamy, but it also really works great for desserts. So what I did was I soaked my cashews for about 2 hours. You can also soak it overnight. And I'm going to use this for the recipe. First thing that we're going to do is we add the red bell peppers first for this recipe. Then I add my cashews. I'm adding about 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. I'm adding a jalapeno pepper and 2 cloves of garlic. If you're afraid of heat, all you have to do with the jalapeno is de-seed it. So cut it down the middle, remove the seeds, and then you're good to go. And then I'm adding Himalayan sea salt. So there's this question about what salts are good. Salt can impact your blood pressure, la-da-dee-la-da-da. Himalayan sea salt is a great salt because it hasn't been stripped of its vital nutrients. And so it doesn't necessarily have the same impact on your blood pressure as your iodized salt has, your white salt, which is very processed. And what's also great about it is a little goes a long way. It's a saltier salt. So you end up using a lot less than you would have if you were using like your typical white salt. So in terms of liquid, depending on how well your cashew soak, you might have to add very minimal. Just going to add a couple of drops here, and I think I'm going to be pretty good. And we're going to start to blend. Just gotta plug this. Okay, we're good to go. So from here, if you're using a high-speed blender, you're going to start off pretty low and then work yourself up. This recipe doesn't require you to have a high-speed blender. The key to this recipe is, again, to have your bell peppers at the bottom, and then you'll be pretty good. Right, so I'm going to turn this up. And we're done. No nutritional yeast, no onion powder, just nice fruits and vegetables to make this happen. And so from here, we're going to use this for our dressing. Side note, you can use this as a dip. I love to have it with my tortilla chips. Also, you can use it to make some kale chips. So what you would do is get your bunch of kale, massage this on, not as much as I did here, but just make sure that it's all over there. You either throw it in the oven at 350 degrees for 15 minutes, or you throw it in the dehydrator until it's good, and trust me, you'll love it. So you can use this recipe in many ways. You can use part of it for this taco salad that we're making, or you can use the other half to make yourself some kale chips, or just use it as a dip, which is what most of my clients do. Okay, so back to the salad. Then we're going to play the layering game. A lot of times people are like, I don't really like salads. And so I love this recipe because it helps people fall back in love in salads. And it's so rich and hearty that you typically don't need anything else but the salad. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add some of my kale in here. And so you have the option to mix this all together because I want this to be kind of ready. I'm going to sort of layer things on. And then I'm adding some of my mixed greens. Put some of that there so you can see what it looks like. So I'm going to do both so you can see. So I just added some kale and then some spring mix. And then here, I'm just tossing this in to a bowl if you're trying to make a nice bowl for your family. Up next, I'm going to add some protein. In this case, I'm adding some black beans. You can have them already pre-cooked. And you just throw them in here, like so. And then I'm going to throw the rest in this bowl. Okay. Then I'm also going to add some corn. You can use raw corn. You don't have to cook the corn. You can even take frozen corn and defrost it and then add it in. So here's the thing with corn. Some people are like, wait, corn. If you buy it organic, one of the stipulations for organic is it can't be a GMO. So organic corn is always the way to go because if it's not organic, it's definitely a GMO. And so I'm adding that in here. So starting to get some colors. So one of the things I always like to tell people is to have a complete meal, I want you to think about eat the rainbow. Are you seeing all the colors of the rainbow in your dish? If you are, you're doing pretty good, okay? So if you're making a bowl for your friends and family and you don't want to do all this layering for every plate, this is what I'm doing here, okay? From there, what I did, we're going to talk about how do you cook without oil, is I sauteed some onions and bell peppers, and in this case, shiitake mushrooms. Typically, I use portobello mushrooms. Had a bunch of shiitake mushrooms that I wanted to make sure didn't spoil. If you want to try some oilless cooking, instead of using oil to saute your veggies, you can use some broth. So I've used some vegetable broth and I sauteed these down and you don't have to use oil. So that's one of the ways that I do some oilless cooking. All right, so we're going to add that in. In terms of seasoning, you can use like a liquid seasoner. Season it to your taste. Is always what I suggest. I'm gonna add a couple more slices of mushroom on top here. And then I'm just mixing this in. Okay. Then we're here. So I'm mixing it in the bowl. For those of you who want to see the different ways, 2 different approaches to the salad. So you're already seeing all these beautiful colors in here and flavors. So you almost don't need to have a dressing, to be quite honest. Up next is our favorite fruit that we like to call a vegetable, our tomatoes. I am using a variety of sun-kissed tomatoes. So I have some dark cherry and then I have the golden ones, and I'm going to just throw a few up in here. I'm also going to toss some in my bowl. Just tossing it around here, so I'm also going to add an avocado for the fiber and the good fat, you know. So if you're going to get some fat, instead of approaching your oils, which are very processed, what you can do is you can get your avocado as a good source of fat. So you do need fat for your brain and some other metabolic functions. So it's not that we don't want to avoid fat. We want to just make sure we're getting the right fats in our diet. And avocado is also a great source of fiber. And fiber is what's going to keep your bowel movements going so that you're not suffering from any types of blockages. So I'm adding some of that in here, and I'm going to throw the rest in there. Okay, just add around a bit more. Okay, I also like to add cilantro. Some people have a genetic mutation where cilantro tastes like soap to them. So they probably like, cilantro. For those of you who don't have that issue, the reason why we want to get some cilantro in there is because cilantro is a heavy metal remover, and heavy metals have been shown to be a leading cause for a lot of the issues that we have in terms of our health, in terms of like hormone disruption and nervous system disruption and so much more. So there are foods that are naturally occurring in nature that help us get rid of that mercury. And you think about heavy metals, it's really hard to avoid them. They're showing up in a lot of food products that we're using. That's another reason why we want to try to eat more plants and get some more fiber in our diet, so that these, I should say, that's why we want to be having some of these foods like cilantro, or your wild berries is another good way to get heavy metals out of the body, dulse or chlorella, so that the buildup doesn't get you to a place where you're now having chronic disease. And the thing about heavy metal buildup is you'll have all these symptoms and your doctor won't be able to identify what it is. And it might simply be that you need to just do a deep heavy metal cleanse. So I'm putting some of that here. Ooh, nice, pretty. Throwing the rest in there. Cool. Just mixing it up. Okay. Last but not least, I'm going to add some sprouts. Not necessary. This is totally optional. These are considered superfoods because they are so dense. So I'm just adding a variety of sprouts in here to complete this dish. Throwing something there. Just mixing it around. If you see, when I layer it, it's really nice and moist. So you don't necessarily need to have so much dressing, especially if your saute mix of mushrooms and onions and bell peppers were seasoned pretty well. It can be like a nice layer of flavor. So I like to add some tortilla chips on the side. And this is our taco salad. And then I'll add some hard dressing. So typically I'll put this in a special container. Just want to spray this around. A little goes a long way, so usually I just do a little bit. It's pretty good. I wouldn't add any of this dressing on in the bowl just because you want someone to be able to determine how much of this they want to have. So if you look here, we're nice and yummy and ready to go. And then this is our Instagram ready plate. So this meal is really good source of iron, protein, fat. You're getting your vitamin C. You're getting rid of those heavy metals. That fiber is right there for you, so it's not clogging you up, and it's gonna make you feel really good, so you don't get that itis afterwards. So try it out. Tell me what you think. Again, my name is Nzinga from Yes Baby I Like It Raw. Thank you for spending some time with me, and have a wonderful day.